Okay, good morning, ladies, and thanks so much for joining our webinar, CPG Unpacked, our monthly webinar where we are unpacking some major topics in the CPG space. Today is all about plant-based foods. So thanks so much. My name's Ashley. I'll do a bit of a bio in a second, but I also wanted to introduce you to Laura and Maddie. Thanks so much for joining, ladies. I'm so excited to have you. Yeah, just to kick things off, one of the reasons why I was inspired to invite you to this monthly webinar is, of course, our shared mission. Social Nature's, but both of yours, is to inspire consumers to try natural. And our belief is a brighter food future for all, powered by plants. So really excited to have such a strong shared mission as our anchor for the conversation today. So my name's Ashley. I'm one of the founding members of Social Nature and head of business development here. Maybe let's pause and please tell me your kind of intros as well.
Laura, you want to go?
Oh,
Sure.
okay. I'm Laura Shenkar. I'm the founder of PKN. We make plant-based pecan milk, and we just brought out a barista for specialty coffee.
I'm excited to try.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maddie Segal from the Plant-Based Foods Association. I'm the director of membership for the Plant-Based Foods Association, and we are the industry trade association for plant-based foods. We have about 200 members, which Pecan is one of. So happy to be here with you all today. Excited for the conversation.
Yes, thanks so much, ladies. And for anyone who is tuning in, thank you so much. And if you have any questions, please feel free to pop through the chat and we will do our best to pause and answer questions as we go, but there will also be some time after the fact. We do have some slides to share with you today because there's just so much information to unpack that we wanted to make sure that it was front and center for you all to follow as we go. So, plant-based foods. I know it is a trending topic right now, and the future is bright. And I want to let Maddie kind of go through some exciting stats that we are here to kind of unpack together.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. So yeah, the slides we're going to share here are from some recent consumer research we did with 8451, which is Kroger's data arm. This is research we've done for the past 4 years. So it's been really cool to be able to see the trends over time and the differences in how consumers perceive plant-based foods. What are they looking for? Just quickly to overview though, the plant-based foods industry is an $8 billion industry. We have really strong household penetration with 59% of all households purchasing plant-based foods and a 79% repeat rate. So the industry remains really strong, although it's changing and it's evolving over time. So with the consumer demand, though, one thing that continues to be kind of the key driver for why consumers are approaching plant-based foods is health. That's something that we've seen, but there has been this increasing awareness of the sustainability associated with plant-based foods. And so we're seeing that number 2 reason, planetary health, is really kind of like a growing area of interest for folks. Of course, you always have those folks that are interested in animal welfare, the ethical, vegan population. But the growing area of interest really is around planetary health. So excited to have Laura here because I know that's kind of a key value proposition that she has with her company's products. And then we have some more data to dive into, but one thing that has kind of come out really interestingly as we're looking at this data is, so what's different about this data is that we're using behaviorally verified data as opposed to just self-claimed sampling. So with that kind of data, that gives us the ability to look at the difference between what consumers say they're doing versus what they're really doing. And so one of the most interesting findings, which we'll have some more detailed data to show you in just a little bit, is that the continuous innovation we're seeing in this industry has really positively influenced consumer sentiment. So really happy about the fact that, I've been in this industry for 5 years and I've seen so much change in the innovation and companies work so hard on improving the taste and texture of their products. And we're seeing consumers saying, hey, I noticed and we're happy about it. So happy to dive in more on that too. Next slide. Yeah, thanks. So in this study, we looked at the migration of consumers towards plant-based foods and then also away from plant-based foods. So those that are increasing their purchases and those that are decreasing. And so, as I was saying with the behaviorally verified data, one of, I think, the most interesting findings from this is that 96% of those folks who are decreasing their plant-based foods consumption claim to be increasing or maintaining consumption. So what does that tell us? That tells us that consumers want plant-based foods, they are seeking them out, and they think they're eating more, but they're not. So we really looked into what are the reasons why, and there's kind of a lot of reasons why. One of them is that, you know, retailers really have been shifting to optimizing product velocities and making sure that the products they put on their shelves really are, you know, leaving quickly. So we've seen some discontinuation of items that didn't meet velocity thresholds. And so there's been some reduction in the product availability on shelves. And so that's one reason that we're seeing. But others are really kind of, there's a lot of price considerations to think about and you know, other data points that we can kind of talk about too.
For sure. One of the things that I noticed with Social Nature is community, because I mean, we have 1 million natural shoppers, and what our own studies have shown is that while folks that report, like while the percentage of vegans and vegetarians is not necessarily exponentially growing, certainly people who would describe themselves as a flexitarian is for sure growing. So 73% of our community of those 1 million shoppers would describe themselves as flexitarian. So that's curious. Laura, I'm wondering from your perspective, like when you think of your ideal target market for PKN, do you have a sense of like who this ideal shopper is? And do you go for like the deep green vegan and vegetarians, or is it kind of a lateral shopper, or do you care at this point?
So actually, Social Nature has helped us to define the persona of the people that are the early movers. So I guess to answer your question in a complicated way, we go for the people who are early movers. We go for the people who not only decide something, they're looking for something, and then they take action. So who are the people who go to the dairy aisle, look at the milk and the new kinds of organic cow's milk, look at the corn milk, the potato milk, and all the other kinds of milk, and choose to try something new. So that's our focus in terms of who we're looking for. It does include a lot of hardcore vegetarians. It also includes a lot of hardcore nutrition health focused people. One of the surprising things that Social Nature brought out is that people would actually rather have sugar than stevia, even though stevia is healthier. The other thing that we look for are people who really care about taste. So as you talk about people thinking that they want to go plant-based, but then aren't, I think about the milk, people who've gone back to cow's milk because they're concerned about the added vegetable oil and oat milks, or, you know, the pesticides and that kind of thing. What we're able to do is offer, I guess, no added vegetable oils. I guess an average 8-ounce glass of oat milk has as much vegetable oil as medium French fries. But I think more importantly, if you're going to have coffee in your morning, you want something that's a pleasure, that's a wonderful thing. And plant-based doesn't need to mean that you're giving up on taste and the luxury. And I guess I can't explain what pecans taste like, but there's a buttery, creamy taste that brings everyone back to their childhood, to crisp fall evenings, and to Thanksgiving pie. And so we're able to sort of bring that into the equation. I think that I guess that we will never have a full market of people who eat perfectly and who eat exactly according to their ideological or nutritional priorities. And so this is where it does matter, the craft, the food science, how do you make this a rich, desirous experience?
I love that.
Yeah, that makes sense, Laura. And as you're thinking about your consumers too, I think you did note though that a lot of the consumers are flexitarians and they're trying this. So they have both the milk in their basket, but they also may have a plant-based product. And we're seeing that too, that, you know, flexitarians really are our core consumer as well. But we did look into, I mean, part of this was to study the migration of people towards plant-based foods. And so part of what we looked at was, you know, which of these consumers are consuming these plant-based products instead of animal-based. And so this was one of the first years where we saw such a dramatic increase, especially on the milk side, in consumers who were choosing plant-based instead of animal-based. So that went up to 40%. And this makes sense for milk, right? Because I think one of the primary drivers of why people seek plant-based dairy options is because of allergies, you know, and because they feel better when they're eating plant-based products, at least milk, for sure. So this was an interesting finding this year for that in regards to the migration. Can pop over to the next slide. And then as we're looking at, you know, why, you know, what would make it easier for folks to shop for plant-based foods. One reason why I was really excited to be on this webinar and talking about social nature is because you all have the ability to help us, you know, meet this need. And so it's just so obvious that what consumers really want here are more promotions. So this is really specifically looking at those folks who are increasing their plant-based consumption. What would make it easier for them to increase even more? And they said promotions or coupons, you know, recipe ideas and education. So if you look at those top three, Ashlie, I'd love to tie you back in here on, you know, what are the ways that social nature can help people to achieve these three, you know, opportunities for increasing customers.
Yeah, I feel like this is also, we did a recent study on inflation, and this really also, these stats are also backed up by inflation. And this idea of like, number one, like as a shopper, I'm a busy mom with 2 kids under the age of 5. Like my attention span is very limited. So I need like a call to action to actually make the switch. And that sometimes that is often a promo, right? It's a promo of like, oh, I've been curious about this brand, but I haven't had a chance to try it. Or it's almost like that's like the marketing call to action, I wonder, is what helps stand out on the shelf. Especially when we're talking about an emerging brand like PKN against a So Delicious, for instance, right? Like there is the kind of the elephant in the room of like, you need to stand out as an emerging brand. And those promotions are very helpful in this retracted market amongst a busy mom like myself and an emerging brand going against the big guns. That's kind of where we see social nature really helping brands create that sell-through through these promotions. Absolutely, for sure. Laura, I'm curious for you, do you guys rely on in-store promotions for that additional visibility, or how do you think of promotions? And we will get to the social nature piece, but just in general, maybe it would be helpful for you to share.
So yeah, so actually one of the few times today, this will be a very easy answer.
Yeah.
That is the primary thing. That is the only thing. We do have a product that's widely loved, that's you know, that's gaining a lot of momentum, but nothing happens unless someone takes this off the shelf. And as I said, I was describing that magical moment when someone tastes it and they go, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But you need to get that far, and we are hitting our heads against the wall trying to figure out how you get people to take it off the shelf and try it. And we don't always succeed. I found 4 people who really don't like pecans in the last 5 years, but we do so well once we get them to do that. So as I said, there is a concern that this is going to taste bland and like a whitener or something. The people are worried about giving up their love of dairy. And as soon as we can get them to taste it, all of this is over. Let me just also point out one thing. We haven't yet talked about it. We're going to get to it. What's going to go on? You've got twice as much of the market that is lactose intolerant, that that has to be drinking something other than cow's milk in milk. So this is one of the few plant-based categories where you've got a health-based objective that that is a huge market gap right now.
Yeah, for sure. It's a great point. And we talk about that a lot, right? You know, and especially with health being the number one driver, right? For why people are seeking these products. And to your point of, you know, getting people to pull it off the shelf, as we're looking at those folks who are decreasing, which is this slide, perfect timing, whoever switched the slide. You know, one thing that we're also really happy to see is the fact that over time, consumers are saying that disliking taste and texture has decreased. I mean, just look how drastic those are as you know, reasons people are decreasing. So we're really seeing that consumers are responding to the innovations of this industry, and the food manufacturers are working hard to make products better all the time. So a lot of what this is about is that retrial, right? Maybe you tried it 3 years ago and didn't like it, but as you said, Laura, I mean, some of these products are so incredible. It's just about getting that initial, you know, trial. And so that's where promos really come in, and social nature. Oh my gosh, Ashlie, like that's your bread and butter of what y'all do is getting people who are potential consumers to try these products.
And actually, to your point, the amount of brands who take the feedback from the social nature campaign, do a reformulate or a repositioning, and then want to retarget those same consumers is a very common use case, because to your point, brands are constantly making their products better and better. So, you know, that taste that you tried 3 years ago, try again, because the whole space has evolved a ton. Or I think, unfortunately, you might have tried a competitor and it didn't stack up, and you're like, oh, I don't like this entire category, or this entire, like, you know, I no longer like the chicken nugget. Then Notco comes out with a chicken nugget and it's incredible. And I'm like, oh no, you should try the Notco chicken nugget, for instance, you know, like,
right.
There's a lot of that in the space.
And that's a great way to distinguish yourself as a brand too, right? Like, especially like you, Laura, you're like one of the emerging brands, and you know, really being able to focus on reaching those customers in the first place who maybe they were disappointed by one brand, or they didn't have a taste for that type of, you know, plant-based milk, but, you know, come try my products. So yeah, as we're looking at, you know, why are the people who are decreasing their products, why are they doing so? And what are the suggestions to win them back? Lower pricing, more promotions, you know, this is kind of pulling through on all of these, but then better taste and texture still does come up. So that's, again, kind of where we need to bring in those consumers who maybe need to retrial or try a different brand. And then, you know, easier to find in store and having more of an assortment. That is something that, you know, we are working as the trade association, we work with retailers on specifically is, you know, helping with merchandising products, because, you know, consumers are looking for it, but maybe they can't find the products in store. So that is another key thing where we are, you know, doing in-store controls tests, and even, you know, learning from the brands that we work with. You know, example, there's a great case study with shredded cheese where Violife moved the product from a different aisle into the shredded cheese aisle, but in a plant-based designated set, and saw a huge increase in sales. So these are all different factors as well that are playing into this. But one other thing that we really look at is, you know, our state of the marketplace data is coming out really soon. And through that, we have SPINS and Circana data, where we use point of sale data and household panel data and look at really scoping out the entire industry. But one kind of key thing that we notice is that e-commerce sales of plant-based foods hold a larger share of online sales compared to traditional brick and mortar. So in the e-commerce environment, plant-based sales are about 6.5%, as opposed to brick and mortar is 4%. So e-commerce is a really wonderful opportunity for plant-based foods, and thinking about, you know, through those retailers, how are you supporting their e-commerce platforms, you know, Instacart and those kinds of folks. So actually, I was curious from your perspective, like, do you all help support on the e-commerce side as well through Social Nature?
Yeah, great question. I would say that the primary way that we help support is through review syndication. So our kind of first foot forward with our brands is helping them win at brick and mortar retail. So most brands, when they're expanding their distribution, they don't expand all at once. For instance, say you go from Sprouts to Walmart. Walmart's going to give you 701 random store locations, and now what? And so that's where Social Nature really supports and sell through at that store list. But then secondary to that, to your point, in the spirit of discoverability, we take those reviews from that campaign and then syndicate them to retailer.com sites. And I would say that that's probably our best way in how Social Nature supports D2C sales or retailer sales like Walmart, Target, that kind of thing. Unfortunately not Amazon. I still haven't figured out how to get reviews to Amazon.com. I don't think anyone has, but yeah, I would say that's the short answer on how we can support e-commerce.
That's
Laura,
wonderful.
how much of your, I mean, how much, because I'm always, I will say that I'm a bit biased towards brick and mortar. I think as a brand, it's easier to scale at brick and mortar than it is online, unless you have a really sophisticated retail media agency that's helping you with that, which things have improved in that regard in a big way. But Laura, how much of your sales are online versus in-store? I'm so curious to know.
About right now, about 10% of our sales are e-commerce.
Yeah.
And I do find it interesting how the loyal followers find us. We're about to scale up and be adding Target to the list of retailers, so that's certainly going to put us in a different league. And we basically we live and die based on this, core of consumers who, with the Social Nature program, they really did they gave us feedback in such detail that we were able to not only understand that taste, when taste was a problem, they helped us understand what the problem was. For us, it was that they said, it doesn't taste like I expected, which was, a really weird thing because there wasn't any pecan milk on the market. So what were you expecting? And it helped us understand that we really needed to bring up the pecan flavor. So without the depth and the in-person sort of going to the store and picking it up and bringing it home, without that, we wouldn't have gotten that depth of information. I think what we're hoping is that more and more of our sales are e-commerce because people know the brand and want it. We do very well on Instacart. So Amazon is more of a complicated area. So we're excited about expanding that.
I love that.
That's awesome. This was really just the last slide, which is really more of our recommendations of, what do we think are kind of the biggest priorities for winning with consumers for plant-based foods. One is educate on the category. That can be on package, that can be through shopper marketing. There's lots of avenues for that, and definitely PBFA is always happy to help with that. Offering promotions and variety. That's a great way to partner with Social Nature and in your retail partner, and then making it easier to find and prepare. Kind of what you were speaking to, Laura, too, is like a little bit of like, how do you build that relationship with your consumers? So you have those really loyal consumers. How are you? I'm curious, like how are you communicating with them once you have them?
As I said, right now we're sort of very geographically diversified. So we're in like sort of heartlands of Texas, in the Middle West, in California, and it really is, a group of individuals. And as I said, as we expand that to be communities, we found that TikTok and the social media are very effective, but these are, jungles for a little company, very, very expensive. So I think we very much feel like we're on the bleeding edge of plant-based. I think we have a lot of sort of cultural momentum because, as I said, people love the pecan. And as you develop this in coffee houses, we've got this sort of brand profile that's being raised. So we're seeing this right now, day by day, week by week, just expanding. And it is, I think people know that they want plant-based. They know it's healthier, it's better for the environment, but they want to be charmed. They want to love their food. So there's a challenge there.
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed that is part of the storytelling, certainly I know we've spoken to it or touched on it a bit, but recipes really do help. So like when it comes to like as a consumer, like is pecan milk sweet? Is it savory? Can I use it in both sweet and savory recipes? And like just like kind of like almost anticipating some of those questions and then helping, like honestly it can be as simple as like, oh, seeing recipes with both sweet and savory then helps create that context of like, okay, I got it, I can just use it as like a one-to-one replacement. Great. Like it's just like almost like demystifying it for consumers. Again, we always think that like, oh, we wish the consumers cared more, but I almost think of it as like having so much empathy for like just how distracted and busy consumers are. It's they really do care, and I really do think that the average consumer is a aspirational shopper, and they think that they're shopping better than their shopping list said one thing and their kids ended up making another. And like, right, it's like all of a sudden they have this like sugar laden crap in their cart because their kids were there, right? It's just like, so like we have the best of intentions. So I always just have so much empathy for the shopper and that from that perspective for sure.
So one of the key things we're learning is that we do have a very busy early customer, but they
Yes.
also want to feel like they're like, I guess, Julia Child or something. So the expectation is super high. And one of the things we're doing with our social media is giving some examples. For example, if you put pineapple in our pecan milk, it actually tastes amazing. So what we do is we talk about, would you do it with vanilla, pineapple, or some sort of, cinnamon flavor, and you give people options and they go, huh, let me see what I would do. And so to some extent, the aspiration is so heavy. It's usually on women to both like get everything done really fast, get nutrition in there, and then have it taste like blast off,
Yeah.
TV worthy food. So there's that conflict.
Well, so that the family actually eats it, because there's nothing more defeating than you make this beautiful meal that is, ticks all of your boxes, and then it doesn't taste as good as like, they're not willing to compromise on taste. That's the biggest thing, right? Yeah, that's so interesting. And I mean, I think we've spoken to kind of like how Social Nature helps that discoverability, and really just like that was always our premise in starting Social Nature, is that, I mean, 10 years ago, the climate looked very different. And I always joke that the problems haven't changed for brands, it's just how to solve them has changed. But at the end of the day, like getting on shelf and staying on shelf is still the same core issue for brands, which is both I guess good news and bad for all of us all. But it's like the problem hasn't changed, but some of the levers to pull. No longer are people so over reliant on in-store demos, which is our thought process when we first started Social Nature, is that we wanted to have more of a scalable model where we had a community of better for you shoppers. And we figured that if we could play matchmaker based on the brand's ideal targeting, then conversion to sale unaided thereafter would take care of itself. And that was the thought process with Social Nature, and certainly it has worked. So I'll just talk a little bit about who we work with, and then I really want Laura to just kind of, I think there was some aha moments in the program for Pecan that was cool to see, and those peripheral benefits is really what's helpful in your go-to-market strategy for sure. But just a little thing, we've helped over 600 natural brands win at retail. The idea, of course, is to acquire your target shoppers so that the sale unaided thereafter actually works. Gaining actionable insights, which we will look at PKN's insights, and then acquiring those product reviews for review syndication is very important. I mean, Walmart and Target, Laura, to your point, getting into that new league is wonderful, but there is higher expectations as it relates to in-store velocity and retailer scorecards. Part of that is having reviews on your site immediately when you go live on Target and Walmart.com. So we have partnerships with Bazaar Voice and Yotpo, to help with that. We also have a new approach that we're very excited, and it's called multi-channel, which is the idea that we want to extend the social nature campaign to other marketing avenues for brands. So think of your in-store demo, email marketing, influencer marketing. The idea, it could actually even just be your social media strategy, where social nature can now include a call to action around, okay, so you're talking about yourself on social, you're saying, we have this new barista milk. We've spent so much time and energy in creating this like perfect foam. You're gonna love it. Hey, want to try it for yourself? Here's a $2 off coupon to try at Target. And then this just allows you to connect the dots between not just Social Nature's community, but your digital social channels as well. So we're very excited about that. And are offering it for free for any annual clients to do a test run. So if anyone's interested, let me know. But let's get into some of the results from the PKN campaign, because they were incredible. Laura, I'll let you speak to some of this.
You're muted, Laura.
Sorry. The first thing I wanted to just point out with regard to the PPFA is that at every step, the community involvement with the Plant-Based Food Association has been so important, because it informs sort of what triggers work and don't work in this ever-changing market. So as we looked at these results, we had to think about what can we do about this. And I guess a driver of, we've got, a very tight budgets and everything, a driver for how we spent, and we spent more than almost $200,000 since this on product development. The reason for that had everything to do with, one, the fact that taste mattered, and it made a big difference for the people who liked this, but also we got, and I guess these are very, very important results. They're obviously very promising. We did very well in these placements, and that was very important for the company as we built the revenue. But I think more importantly, we got, like, these aren't just customers. These are people in a community who consider themselves like, listened to, and they really were listened to. So we got over 2,000 text detailed reviews, and you're able to search and look for specific themes. There were several very specific directions in terms of taste. So it's nice to say you like the taste or you don't like the taste. Really not helpful if you're going to try to reformulate. So as I said, there was the thing about, it doesn't taste like I was expecting. I want more pecan flavor. There were comments about at the time we were using calcium carbonate, and there was a chalky flavor to that. So we've completely changed the ingredient list as a result. One of the initial comments, which has become much stronger since this, is this emphasis around simple ingredients. So what do you guys have in your refrigerator or your cabinet right now? People want us to use only what's already in their cabinet. So we brought out, as a result of these studies, we brought out something called Zero, which is nothing but pecans, vanilla, and salt. So you probably already have those in your cabinet, and you all are very intelligent people. You know that calcium carbonate is perfectly safe, but you would rather pay money for something that doesn't have anything that you don't like, a simple ingredient. So that was a very important trend. It was a very difficult product to put together. So before we made that investment, it was very helpful to get lots of concrete data, not anecdotal, but if you talk in the thousands, you really start to get that. The other thing that came out was that these social nature clients go to very specific stores. So we had stores on the East Coast using something that was supposed to be focused on the West Coast. And it was very interesting to find out who these people were and how active some of them would be to go out and seek things. So we didn't speak with our classic average customer, we spoke with the super customers. And so that was very relevant. Yeah, and I guess it is that we have all of the gluten-free and non-GMO, all the sort of basics that you would expect from a better for you plant-based product. But what you see in this is that it's the creaminess, it's the taste, that's going to get people to take this off the shelf instead of the, I don't want to villainize corn milk, the corn milk or the potato milk or whatever. This is what you think it is. This is pecan milk. So it's very, very helpful. And as I said, we're very proud to be expanding, and we are working very hard to make the grocers who are sort of putting us in the stores and their customers happy.
I love that. Sell-through. I mean, when you think about your customers, you're thinking about your consumers and your retailers. We can't forget that that fostering that relationship with your retailer customers is key. There's some other pieces that I find really interesting just to compare to other campaigns that I see. But in this category, I find it really interesting to see that 93% of these community members drink plant-based milk, but 56% had never heard of PKN. So that really, like, closing the gap on that household penetration is incredibly important. And almost every brand I work with thinks their household penetration is better than it is. I mean, you know, right? So consumers think they're more of an aspirational shopper than actuality. Well, brands think they have more penetration than they do. We all are very hopeful in our efforts, but that's life, right? So it's just an interesting kind of piece there. And absolutely, one of the things that I'm very interested to see is when we did our own studies similar to PBFA with inflation, when we talk about categories that folks are trading up and down on, they are not trading down in this category. They are looking for taste, value, actual health, and they're willing to pay more on that. And that's also, so that price at 40% is really incredible, because in the snack category, that's not what I'm seeing. In the snack category, people are certainly willing to trade down. So reinforcing these value-based positioning statements around the simple and whole ingredients is absolutely key. I couldn't agree more. Let's look at some of this stuff, because it was really incredible to see. Your star rating was incredible. So 83% had never tried pecan before, but 77% said they plan on buying this again. So that was very cool to see.
It was, yeah. And it's, I think if you did that same thing today, I'm afraid at like Target, probably the numbers are going to be very similar. We are always surprised that people don't get the idea of pecan milk. Like, you know what a pecan is, you know what almond milk is, and for some reason it's not taking. So this is where basically it isn't just a promotion for everybody. There are very specific people that Social Nature has reached out to and said, would you like to try this? And so there's more activity around that, which has been very, very important.
Love it.
Something I'm noticing here too, Laura, is that, you know, your number one item that they liked was the no added sugar, and that's on your pack. You have that on your pack. So, I mean, was that informed, that decision to add that to the front of your pack, was that informed by this, or were you doing that before?
So this was the first generation of products, and yeah, we had stevia in the mix. I guess I was the CEO who made that decision. I take responsibility for it. I still feel like it's much better against diabetes than pure cane sugar, but the reality is that people really love. You wake up in the morning, you want your coffee. Please don't mess with me until I've had my coffee. Thank you very much. They want something that's rich and creamy. So the original accomplishes that with just a lot of pecans with no added sugar. The Zero as well, which is a product that we developed as a result of this, has no added sugar. And it is, not only is it something that people are looking for, but it's also something that is getting us time with buyers. So I have an in-person meeting with a major buyer next week, and it's supposed to be a result of the Zero. So these are the kinds of things that the Plant-Based Food Association called out. And as I said, I did argue, but you were right. Yep. And here we are.
Yep. No added sugar again.
Talking about innovation, though, you're responding to the consumer preference and the need. And I think the industry does such a good job of that. And it's a place where, just to call out the industry just for 1 second, it's where we actually have an opportunity. As the plant-based foods industry, we can make these changes. Whereas if you're just looking at milk or like chicken, there's not really any way to innovate that, right? It's just chicken. So we do have lots of opportunity, and I'm very proud of the fact that the industry does such a good job of just responding and pivoting and pushing forth these really great changes for consumers. Go ahead, Ashlie. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Sorry, so
No,
let
no,
me
no.
call out, one of the things that you guys highlighted was this idea of no thickeners or emulsifiers. And so that makes it really hard to make something that isn't made out of cow's milk creamy. And so when I talk about the amount of money and time we spent on product development, we understood that that was going to be a big deal. And that's the reason for the zero. All of our products are paying attention to this in the next generation. And it's a hard thing to do if you're plant-based.
Yeah.
One of
Love
the
that.
things,
Love that milk fat there.
yeah. And one of the things that I find about just the conversations we've had within this call and beyond is I feel like a lot of brands think that new products to market is like the be all and end all, but what you're kind of talking about is like improved or different occasion usages. And I just think in this climate, we're talking about like the additional challenges of getting ACV of new products just to launch a new SKU seems risky, can I say? But then when, Laura, when you're talking about the new barista milk, which I feel like we should take a second to talk about, because I was like, oh my gosh, how like frothy and beautiful must it be? And then you made the point, please make the point now again, because I was just like, oh, I had not even thought about that. But your product innovation mindset is so important here, which,
Oh, well, so it's not just important to froth for the coffee industry, which really does define sort of premium retail today. It isn't just the bubbles, it's that they have to be very small bubbles, just like with cow's milk. So lattes have been defined by cow's milk. We need to figure out how we're going to get a steady, consistent bed of microfoam, these little bubbles, out of something that has a lot of oil. Pecans have a lot of very healthy oil, but isn't necessarily made for that. And as I said, that was 18 months of failure. And it makes, when they make the little hearts and the little trees and everything on the milk, it makes a premium product that that continues to sell even in hard times. People love this. So as I said, we're not going for the plant-based food eater. We're going for the whole thing. We're going for everybody. We think that this is such a good product that we can take the dedicated milk drinkers and we can make them love this. I was going to say love us, but we don't want to get too personal.
I did think that what did you associate the taste of the pecan product with? I'm definitely seeing like a lot of like nostalgic sweet kind of treats. Do you have a challenge in the savory profile or like that because I kind of agree here. My sentiment would be like, oh yeah, sweet, luxurious coffee, but what about using pecan in like savory applications, if you will?
I love that question. So right now I'm sending out notes to specific cafes that I met at this coffee show this weekend, and we're offering them the opportunity to take this product and make it into their own, make it specialty. And we're very limited on budget and means, but this is a great ambition. There's so much left to be done. So the other area of taste that's really cool would be Native American. So that isn't sweet and it's not spicy, it's something in the middle. One of the things that we can do while keeping the environmental necessity of plant-based is get really, really expansive in terms of how things taste. And so this is, I think, one of the exciting things. This is under the category, if I had another, whatever, $5 million, what we would do. We'll get there. And we'll get there because they're dedicated people who are, trying these things out.
Love it. Okay, which SKU did you try? I also thought this was pretty interesting. So like were you surprised by the demand of product by flavor? Because that is interesting. Like the sweetened versus unsweetened is like pretty on par.
Yeah, it is. And this is what Maddie was talking about. People are voting with, this is a nutritional choice. They're voting, they don't want sugar. They also don't want stevia, but they don't want sugar. What is being called perfectly here has been renamed to be zero.
Got it.
Perfectly just drove me nuts. It felt too like nothing's perfect. It didn't seem
Right.
right. Anyway, so that's the zero. And this was the beginning of a really exciting new birth of a new product, which is hard to make and will probably define our future. And as I said, what we look toward are the farmers, the pecan farmers who want to really sort of like expand their financial capabilities, the way that they're environmental, get into regenerative. They've got to have this upcycled pecan revenue stream to make that work. So when I think about the future, it's very much about either no added ingredients beyond pecans, vanilla, and salt, or very few.
I love that. Well, I did want to pause and just say that anyone who's listening who wants to stay in touch with us, of course, please find us on LinkedIn. Also, we're offering up 500 free activations for anyone who wants to try Social Nature for themselves to drive impact at retail and gain these insights and reviews. Let me stop sharing in case there's any questions folks might have. And let's see. Oh my gosh, I lost you. Sorry. Seconds, questions. Does anyone have questions? Please pop it in the chat.
While we're waiting for those, just also want to put a quick plug in that we, for PBFA members, they get the 500 free activations, and we're so happy to partner with you with Social Nature on that as well. And we, as an organization, we do shopper marketing, like group shopper marketing opportunities. So there's really nice cost savings there through partnerships like we have with Social Nature. So we're happy to be able to extend that to the members.
Yes, we were chatting about why aren't all plant-based brands part of PBFA? And so that's going to be a new challenge, because what Maddie is doing to help kind of remove barriers for y'all to win is really incredible. So definitely reach out. Would love to continue the conversation offline. And as I imagine this conversation was so fruitful, we have run out of time. So no big surprise there, because you all are just such experts in your space. But thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I know everyone else does too. And we will let everyone go on their merry ways.
It was so fun. Thanks for having us.
Thanks,
Thank
lady.
you very much.